Hello and welcome to an early morning Blood Red podcast from the Liverpool Echo. I'm your host, Joe Rimmer, joined today by Ian Doyle. How are we, Ian?
I'm okay, you?
I was fine until you started that. Yeah. Paul Gorst, how are you?
Yeah, I think I'm better than Doyle. But,
well, doesn't take much, does it?
Not much of a barometer.
Yeah,
I'm good.
Excuse me?
Yeah.
Don't tell me how to feel. Anyway, go on.
Very good, very good.
Thanks, no problem.
But I will tell people to...
this is really, really good. I know what's coming. This is brilliant.
It's not about Nord.
Oh, right.
Nord will come in a minute. I will tell people to give us a follow, give us a like, subscribe, leave some hearts, preferably more than last week. Press the bell, not Ian, the bell on YouTube to subscribe.
We've managed to skirt around that joke the entire time we've done this, and you've chosen now to do
finally.
it. Don't tell me whether to be a bell or not.
I've got some questions that I'm going to ask the guys. So if you'd like to send the question in advance, I'm always happy to take them, joe.rimmer@reachplc.com, and we'll ask them on the Blood Red podcast. And yeah, it's all the housekeeping.
Housekeeping done, yeah.
Housekeeping done.
Except for
the big N.
The big N. Let's get the big N out. To get the best discount of your NordVPN plan, go to nordvpn.com/bloodred, and our link gives you 4 months on an extra on a 2-year plan. There's no risk at all with Nord's money back guarantee. The link, I just looked at your face, started laughing. The link is in the podcast episode
Monday,
description box.
No, it's that bit. The link is in the podcast episode description box. It's a bit of a weirdly like a easy one to trip over. I found.
I just looked up and Doyle was smiling at me, and that made me trip. But last week I was watching it live, and I was watching you, and you'd forgotten about it, and you'd asked the first question.
Yes.
Got talking. You had to come back.
I spotted your WhatsApp. Yeah.
Did you spot the WhatsApp?
Yeah,
I wasn't sure. I put it in the YouTube comments as well. I
thought I did remembered that I hadn't given Nord their due what?
Deference.
Deference.
Yeah. Due deference. Yeah. I've got a feeling the first comment on this podcast will be, podcast starts after 3 minutes, 23 seconds.
Right, well, we've got questions to ask, so I'll ask 2 questions. But before I do, they are both about Trent. But after that, this podcast is a Trent-free zone, unless we're talking about him playing right back or a football related. But we're not going to talk Trent. We've talked Trent till the cows came home, and I just don't want to hear about Trent again. But I will answer these 2 questions because I think that's fair. Mo has been in touch.
This Mo Salah?
Mo Salah. He said, there's a possibility that relationship with Trent is both-sided. And what I mean by that is that him continuing to represent Liverpool, albeit in another team's shirt, but still in the form of a Merseyside export. Similar to how Karim Benzema won the Ballon d'Or at Real Madrid, he still presented his Ballon d'Or at Lyon to honour his deep-rooted connection with the city and its football community. Would fans care about this aspect, which in my opinion would show class, because this team would undoubtedly strengthen and compete again. Thank God it wasn't Salah. How on earth would you replace those goals and assists? Thank you very much. And that's from Mo. Also, he says, P.S. Gorsty is so funny.
Yeah, I got the email.
I got it as well. Yeah.
So
funny once. Let's qualify.
Yeah.
He's so funny in that particular.
He's so
incident.
funny because he doesn't intend to be. His comment about comparing Arnslot to your stepdad had me in tears.
I think what he means by that is my dry humour. I don't think he means that I'm unintentionally funny. Not to put words in Mo's mouth, but I am.
Well, would you like to answer Mo's question?
Yeah, I did actually reply to Mo on this one.
Just directly.
Yeah,
you didn't answer it on the podcast. That's the whole point.
No. But, I'm about to now. I'm about to now. I think the difference is with Lyon. With respect to them, they are obviously a big club in France, but I think Liverpool supporters see themselves as equal to Real Madrid. So this idea that Trent Alexander-Arnold should be celebrated for being a success in Madrid doesn't quite hold as much weight as maybe it would with other clubs who aren't as high up on the food chain, shall we say. Whether you agree with it or not, Liverpool fans will see themselves as the equal of Real Madrid. So, they're not going to be wishing him well. I mean, I can see the idea that there will be some sort of civic pride in a lad from West Derby going to play for, who I believe, I know Doyle disagrees, but Real Madrid, for me, the biggest club in the world. And, you can sort of look at it and think, well done to a young lad from Liverpool. But in a footballing sense, I think the lion's share of the thought process is going to be that, it's not something to be celebrated. Certainly not going to be wanting them to do well in the Champions League at the very least. So, yeah, it's something that is not really going to work for me. I can see why at other clubs they would be keen to sort of hold up their players who've left for Real Madrid and made, incredible careers there as sources of pride and all that sort of stuff. But from Liverpool's perspective, I think they very much see it as a defection and a bit of a, at the very least, a sort of traipsing out the back door with your tail between your legs in a way.
Yeah.
So if the question is, will they be bothered about somebody going off and representing some kind of civic pride for the city? Everybody who booed absolutely won't care, and everybody who didn't boo probably won't care.
And that's about right. You know what really annoys me about one of my most biggest pet hates in football is when you speak to someone and they say I hope the English clubs do well in the Champions League.
Yeah.
No.
Don't get me dad on this podcast because me and him disagree on this, and he will. Yeah,
he's dad.
He's very much. Why wouldn't you support the English teams? And it's well, it depends which ones. I'll be honest.
Well, I'm a greedy football supporter, and I always think I don't want anyone else to do well.
Yeah. I'm with you on that.
I want them all to be relegated and struggle.
No, I mean, I think let's
have really bad times.
Okay, let's put it this way. Let's just say, for example, if Manchester City played Real Madrid in the Champions League final, I would be supporting Man City.
Would you?
Yeah, 100%.
Never.
100%. But it doesn't matter now because they've already won it. Yeah, there was this whole thing about City that they were always going to win the Champions League at some point. They've done it now. They're not going to win all of them ones.
They don't want to win more.
No, what I'm saying is, you don't want Real Madrid to win more.
Real Madrid would be the lesser of the two evils for me because I wouldn't have to see it as opposed to City.
Hang on. Have you not watched? Apparently, Real Madrid are meant to be the biggest club in the world, so they're everywhere. You can't escape them.
No, I'm with Gorst. I wouldn't want Man City.
And if Real Madrid win it, then they'll just take all Liverpool's best players. So
yeah. If Aston Villa played Real Madrid in the Champions League final, I'd rather Real Madrid.
Really?
Yeah, I just couldn't be bothered with having to deal with.
Oh no! What happens if Runcorn played them? You're from Runcorn.
I'm not from Runcorn, but if they did, I'd want Real Madrid to win.
Really?
How dare Runcorn?
They've had a great season, Runcorn Linnets, but Real Madrid have beaten them 10-0.
Yeah,
that's quite a bold statement to make.
No, I'm with them. I'm with you on that. Yeah.
Yeah, the only time I've ever supported another English team in the Champions League final was when West Ham got to the final against Juventus in 2004 and Championship Manager.
Okay, so what happens when West Ham got to the Conference League final against Fiorentina the other year when Moyes was in charge?
Let's move on.
Fulham against Atletico Madrid in 2010.
Yeah? Come on, you're telling me you weren't supporting Fulham then?
I mean, I can't really remember now. But
I don't want anyone to do well. Why
got Roy Hodgson in the Liverpool job there, so yeah.
Why should anyone else have a good time ever?
Yeah.
That's the way I look at it. Right, another question from Tim Harris.
What happens when you spend so much time around me? You essentially turn into me.
Please don't say it. Tim Harris has sent me an email.
Tim Howard?
Tim Harris.
Oh, sorry.
It's a very long one, so I'm going to paraphrase it. He says that one side of the Trent story that's not been talked about enough is Liverpool's culpability in allowing this situation to arise. He says that 2 years ago, they should have been negotiating then and giving him a contract that was fair. He says that lots of people talk about the power vacuum at the top of the club, but it's gross incompetence to allow that to not protect your asset, even if that's the case. And considering how well the club's been managed, it's a black mark against the club to allow this all to happen. And have they learned the lesson? We'll soon find out with Konate. I must say, I largely agree with Tim. I think Liverpool have kind of got away with this.
We've done this to death, and ultimately it comes down to the fact that Trent was made vice-captain 2 years ago and has played almost every single game for which he's been available, and they've won. They've competed for a lot of trophies last season, and they've won a Premier League this year. So in terms of him not being wanted enough, the point. Yeah, but as was the case with, you could argue, say, Steven Gerrard 20 years ago when they just didn't bother getting back to him. Don't think it was that. Trent, Liverpool, I would argue, Liverpool did everything that they could have done to make him stay, and ultimately it came down to him wanting to go and try something else.
I definitely think that there's an element of Trent wanting to try something else, but what was the contract offer was made in April of last year, or certainly a conversation was had then. I mean, that's still leaving it late.
I remember writing one day, I can't even remember when it was now, I'd have to dig it out, but it was almost like Liverpool can't take this player for granted too much just because he's from Liverpool. We don't want a similar situation of Steven Gerrard where he sort of started getting a bit twitchier with the lack of movement over his own contract, didn't he? And then that's when he started casting glances elsewhere. Yeah, I mean, it is fair to say that the sort of upheaval at executive level has contributed towards this massively in terms of FSG way back in 2022, sort of kicking the tyres on a potential sale, and then the exits of Julian Ward and Ian Graham and the York Schmacker coming in as a sort of, he wasn't really a sporting director as such, was he? He was just there to facilitate that transfer window. Jurgen Klopp had so much on his plate as a result of the departures. I think that's ultimately what's contributed to him running out of energy and expediting his Liverpool exit in the end. So there's been a knock-on effect, really, or a domino effect. But yeah, at somewhere along the line, perhaps Liverpool have taken their eye off the ball and just assumed that this player is a local lad that he wants to be captain one day, which is what he said from day one, to be fair. So maybe they have sort of let that slip. But there's no doubt about it that Alexander-Arnold views himself as, you know, he's looking to be a brand, isn't he? A brand type of footballer. He's on guest billboards, he's on Google Pixel adverts. He's very much portraying this idea of becoming a household name outside of just what he does with the ball at his feet. So Real Madrid are the club that can help you do that best. So it's probably somewhere in the middle, I think.
Yeah, I think so. And I think as well, clubs walk a fine line. I was reading a story this morning about Marcus Rashford's future, and it was talking about Man United have got this problem that he's paid around 325 grand a week. That if they sell him in the summer, they will have to make up his wages because he's going to refuse to take a pay cut. And I think we all laugh at Man United for the situation they've got themselves in. But clubs walk a very fine line, don't they? If they just give Trent whatever he wants 2 years ago, and it's the same with Konate now. If Konate is demanding such a big contract, then what happens to the next person that comes along and says, I want a contract? They have to. It's a very fine balance, and I think you can see at Man United how they've fallen the wrong side of that. And I think it would be easy for Liverpool to do the same.
Yeah, sorry, just very quickly. It's a small industry, isn't it? So while the players might not necessarily talk about each other's pay packets, you can guarantee the agents are reaching out to other agents and sort of getting a bit of a ballpark figure as to what they might be able to demand. And then that's when you get into that situation, I guess.
Yeah. There's a question for you then. In retrospect, given what we know now, do you think Salah and Van Dijk's contracts were agreed because Liverpool had realised Trent was leaving and so they could free up a bit more money to give to those two?
No, I don't think so. I think they were probably all done individually.
Independence of each other.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd probably be more inclined to say that way. That's how it happened. You know, is Jeremy Frimpong going to be coming in on the sort of wages that Trent was already on? Probably not. So,
can I have a quick ride in your segue because that was really good, and we're going to go straight into Frimpong now. So, Ian, you wrote the stories yesterday.
Is that the line in the sand for Trent?
That is the line in the sand for Trent. I think only. I don't think we need to discuss any
until
more
there's further significant developments. I guess.
Yeah, and we can talk. We'll talk Frimpong now, and we can talk replacing Trent's profile. But I just don't want to talk any more boos and reaction and all that. I think everyone said their piece. So let's move on from that. So let's talk Frimpong. Doyle, I'll let you take the baton on that because you wrote a couple of stories yesterday on him. It looks like that one is edging closer. He's got a release clause. Liverpool seem to love a release clause, and they seem to be moving pretty quickly.
Yeah. He's available for around £30 million, €35 million, isn't it? So it's interesting, isn't it, that most of these transfers now are done in euros as opposed to pounds. You know, most of them are done in that because it's easier for people to follow because exchange rates change.
It's the most boring thing ever said on the Blood Red podcast.
I don't know.
Clip that, Ian.
There you go.
So interesting.
Clip that and see how much abuse I get for that. Yes, so Liverpool obviously have been looking at him for a while. The question mark has been over the fact that he plays right wing back for Leverkusen, but he has played right back more games. I think 125 games started at right back in his career because I know he's at Man City. Like he left them before he played for them. He was at the academy for 10 years there. Then he went to Celtic, and then he spent 4 years at Leverkusen. So, you know, this is somebody who can play there, and they're never going to find a player like Trent. So pointless even trying. So it is a kind of a refresh for the way that they want to play. And obviously, Mohamed Salah is there on the right flank. It was interesting, some comments he made after they won the league where he said, I said to the manager,
Yeah,
I don't want to. If you don't if you don't ask me to track back as much, then I'll be able to deliver the numbers going forward, and that's exactly what he's done. But he's, Salah's going to be there for at least the next 2 years. But they have to start looking to the future now. So maybe Frimpong is somebody who can possibly sometimes play a bit further upfield. If you've got Conor Bradley, don't forget he's there as well. So yeah, our understanding is that Liverpool have been in talks with his agents and his representatives and the player. He's quite keen to come. Liverpool now are just getting ready to reach an agreement with him, which apparently is not going to be too difficult. And then they'll trigger the release clause because Bayer Leverkusen have still got one game left this season.
Yeah.
And he'd end up joining, I think it's July the 1st, I think, or something like that, whatever his contract ends, or whatever the release clause is. I suppose he could come before that, but no point really.
They'll be on holiday, won't they?
Yeah.
But yeah, it's quite encouraging, isn't it? We talk about Liverpool's transfer sort of in action quite a lot, but I think when they do want someone, they tend to move pretty quickly, and they've done that here.
Yeah, certainly with the release clause, they did it in the past with Szoboszlai. It was all sort of done and dusted in the space of 5 days, and we'd argue similar to Alexis McAllister. And I think the discovery of these release clauses is so important because it's not something that's advertised, in bold neon letters. You've got to work with.
Where would that be? Just on the side of the Bayer Leverkusen.
Maybe, yeah.
To the ground.
The Bayer Arena, yeah. Jeremy in lights, release clause. You've got to work with the agents, haven't you?
Does it pop up on our website?
Yeah.
One of the many.
You'll be definitely on the Echo website. Yeah.
You've got to establish these sort of relationships in football to discover these types of clauses, and it's what Liverpool do really well. Because once you do find out that there's a clause in there, it just eliminates the need for protracted, lengthy negotiations, scribbling and squabbling over a few million euro there that can take up weeks sometimes. And, if you look at it now, Liverpool looking to execute a deal quite clinically, really. And, when the transfer news become public less than 2 weeks ago now, and they are closing in on his replacement, so they've obviously known for a while that he's been going, and they've done the due diligence on Frimpong, and it's a different type of player. He's a bit more explosive. He's very quick. He tends to hug the touchline a little bit more, and he'll score goals. He'll score more goals than Trent. He probably won't get the same volume of assists, but it's going to be interesting to see how Liverpool approach their right-back situation now, because Trent's so important for Salah. But they're going to have to figure out a way of getting around that and working differently. So will Salah sort of come in field a little bit more now, and Frimpong goes on the overlap and things like that. And this is the details for Arne Slot to work out. But yeah, it's an exciting addition, isn't it? So soon after Alexander Arnold's news. And I believe Slot when he was saying last week that Conor Bradley has huge potential. He's sort of likening them to Hakimi at PSG, which I thought was interesting. But the question mark is his ability to handle the intensity for 90 minutes on a consistent basis. He's a young player, so he's got time to work on that, and I don't know how you do that, but that's something that he's going to have to tackle and improve and build on, and make sure that his copybook is a lot less blotted with injuries next season. So that's a challenge for him, but he will have Jeremy Frimpong there, who you'd imagine will be the first choice next season, and another year for Bradley to develop, as a bit of an understudy.
I'm glad we're getting some touchline hugging, because there hasn't been much of that since Klopp left. So.
That is true.
What do you mean?
Hugging the touchline.
Is that like, I don't know, is that some sort of in-joke?
Just a reference to Klopp giving out hugs on the touchline as the manager.
Yeah, come on.
Right, okay.
Come on.
Yeah,
Honestly.
Too early.
I'm sure.
Does he pay any attention to what we're
saying?
saying?
There's an intro in there, I'm sure.
There is, yeah. I know. I'm thinking that could be, yeah. I'll let you have it, though.
I wanted to... I've lost my train of thought. Are you slightly surprised? I wasn't...
Excuse me.
When we obviously the news broke that Trent would be leaving, I didn't really expect Liverpool to go so aggressively after a right back. I must admit, I thought that Bradley, and maybe they would look for a backup, or they would consider using Gomez. I don't know.
Bradley's started 15 Premier League games, right? And I think you have to bear that in mind. It's quite a lot to take on if you're stepping into a Premier League champion team.
Yeah.
Right, and he has contributed, and he's going to play games next season anyway. And as I said before, there's scope for Frimpong playing a bit higher up, and then you've got Salah could get moved into the central striking position.
Slot talked about wanting versatile.
Yeah, exactly.
Players,
yeah, so and he basically they've got a player who can do both. You want him to be a right back first and foremost, because that's obviously the position that Liverpool are trying to fill. The thing about me is that he's fast. I think Liverpool, the one thing that they've lacked this season is pace, from certain positions. Bradley's fast. You can see the difference. I mean, it's the old things that no one can run as fast as the ball, so you're never going to get the same thing you get from Trent. I mean, if Frimpong can play those diagonals from up to Diaz, whoever's on the left wing, or Gakpo, or whoever, then great. But he's probably going to offer something else, isn't he? And that's the pace that he's got. Also, Theo's not here, but he'll be pleased for me to mention this.
Yeah.
It's the homegrown quota because he spent those 9-10 years at City's academy. He counts as a homegrown player, so that's good. So Liverpool haven't lost out in that regard, even though quite clearly he's not homegrown, if that makes sense.
Have you heard him speak?
I
got
have not.
It's almost like a Mancunian accent, which is quite funny. I've seen a few sort of post-match interviews with him and stuff across his career. He comes across very, very well. He seems a very likeable character and someone who's going to settle in really well, because he's already got 3 of his international teammates in there. And Liverpool, it's a bit of a Dutch takeover, isn't it? So I think he's going to be a really valued member of the squad.
And hopefully we'll stop in the mixer.
Well, yeah, he does seem the type to be open. So, that'd be good, wouldn't it?
It would be nice Liverpool to have 2 very different options. I quite like Bradley's. He's a powerful runner, isn't he? And he does get to the byline. And I think he gets in the box a lot, Bradley, doesn't he? Whereas Trent wasn't really a box player. He would cross from deeper. But it seems like Frimpong, like you say, seems to be a bit more wide. And yeah, I agree. I think
he'll score goals.
Did he play on the right wing when they played by Leverkusen?
I'm not sure where he played.
A lot higher up, didn't he?
He scored, though, didn't he? He scored in the first half and got ruled out for offside. He took it really well, to be fair, when he went through. So I think he scored nearly 30 goals for Leverkusen. I think 27 possibly. So he will be a goal threat, which everything Trent was, I think maybe didn't score enough. He didn't necessarily get in those positions to score a lot, did he? Because he was more of a creator and passing from deep and stuff. So yeah, it's definitely going to be a stylistic change for Liverpool on the right side of the defence, but. That's up to Slot to sort of iron out the kinks.
And there is a slight irony that Liverpool are taking Xabi Alonso's, because assuming Xabi Alonso goes to Real Madrid, his old right back when he's taking Liverpool's old right back, which again is another intro we'll have to bear in mind when he signs.
And it's not just Frimpong. Gorsty, Liverpool are also in the running, should we say, for Florian Wirtz, which is... It's a pretty exciting one, isn't he? He's one of the most sought-after youngsters in Europe. Obviously, a couple of big clubs also competing for him in Bayern Munich, possibly the favourites, and Manchester City. But I think it shows... The fact that Liverpool are in the conversation shows that they mean business this summer, shows that they are sort of targeting the next stage of their development.
Yeah, the people I've spoken to still believe that he's either going to stay at Leverkusen because he's still only 22 and continue his development there, or he'll go to Bayern Munich. But Liverpool have made it known that should he fancy a fresh challenge in the Premier League, that they'd like to be sort of at the front of the queue for that. Manchester City are also there. Some conjecture over what he was actually up to this week, Florian Wirtz. He was reportedly in England with his parents, his dad's his agent, Hans, and his mother, Karen, and there was some conjecture, I guess, over whether he was visiting Manchester City's training ground or whether he was actually meeting Liverpool officials. Can't really confirm either way, but I think it is fair to say that he was in the Northwest at some stage. But, however it was done, whether it was in person at a meeting or whether it was just over the phone or however it works, Liverpool have sort of registered their interest. Be a bit of a departure from what we've come to expect at Liverpool, because I think he's only 22, he's a German international, he's a Bundesliga winner, so he won't come cheap. But like you say, I think it is an exciting sort of show of intent from Liverpool behind the scenes, because he's a fantastic player, and it shows that this sort of calibre of player that they are targeting this summer, which will be music to supporters' ears, I'm sure.
He flew into Blackpool, didn't he? So maybe he would just go to Coral Island or something.
Yeah.
Loves the old amusements. Loves that. You know what he loves? Slot machines. See, this is all falling into place.
There you go, yeah.
There's another intro for you.
Yeah. And look, I'm just feeding them this stuff.
He's got, 20-odd goals, 20-odd assists this season. He's versatile. Again, he's another player...
It's on fire, isn't it?
He's another player that
This is why it happens when you do them early. I'm still awake at this point.
Yeah.
Do you know what? I loved him. Mo never said that Doyle was funny. Just
no, he said funny. Yeah.
Maybe I'm just responding to that.
Yeah, I mustn't have been on the one that Mo was watching. See, that's the sort of thing you get, Mo. I've forgot my point. 21 goals, 21 assists, something like that ballpark. He's versatile. Again, it seems like the type of player that Slot was talking about, wasn't he, earlier this month when he was saying it. I've discussed with Hughes, and that is not a tribute that they're looking for.
Yeah, he just came out with that unprompted during an open bit of the press conference a couple of weeks ago, which we picked up on. So obviously he'd been thinking about it there and then. I mean, PG here wrote a piece this morning talking about the kind of possibility that he could not just be an attacking midfielder, but he could act as the number 9 false 9.
Yeah, so I think it's been apparent for a while, hasn't it? Certainly something I've been banging on about, that Liverpool need a centre forward this summer. 11 goals between Jota and Núñez, probably not good enough for the Premier League, is it? Premier League champions. But the marker for all singing, all dancing number 9s is probably a bit thin. Alexander Isak is obviously the standout one, but how much is he going to cost? Maybe there's 2 or 3 others across the continent. But this idea of signing Wirtz, the cost of financing that probably means you're not going to be targeting a sort of big money number 9 to go along with it. So could he be almost a bit of a false 9 in the Roberto Firmino type mould? And since seen a statistic yesterday which caught my eye, since the start of the Bundesliga 2 seasons ago, so it's the season the Bundesliga won, Bayer Leverkusen won the Bundesliga, and obviously this season as well, no player has won the ball back in the final third more times than Wirtz, which is very Roberto Firmino-esque, isn't it? That's one of the tactics that made him stand out under Jurgen Klopp. So it was almost like can you almost recreate what Firmino did so well for so long and keep your wide forwards as the players who top the goal chart. So yeah, it's just something that Slot might be working on. And you are right, he did sort of talk up the need for versatile players going forward. And he also spoke a couple of weeks back about Liverpool winning the league early allows them to plan a bit more for the summer, because I think he said, I'm sure you can imagine the players we want this summer, we're not the only ones who want them.
Yeah.
Dean Huijsen would have been an ideal one for that, wouldn't he? Because looks like Real Madrid are going to be getting him. And, Florian Wirtz certainly has suitors with Bayern Munich and Manchester City. So, yeah, we shall see. But I think it's just exciting to know that Liverpool are sort of at the table for these sorts of players.
Yeah. It takes me a little bit by surprise, because as you say, you looking at it, they need a number 9 style player, and I know there's been a lot of talk about them buying potentially an attacking midfielder. I know Carrick is quite keen on them, isn't he, to sign an attacking midfielder, but I thought that Slot's use of Szoboszlai this season sort of tells you all you need to know about how highly he rates him and how important he is in that Liverpool team. So it will be interesting what they did with Wirtz if they signed him, whether they would put him in a centre midfield.
Well, if they put him into midfield, then you're probably saving on a defensive midfielder, because then they'll just say Szoboszlai can be an option as one of the 2 defensive ones. So
they got Jones as well, haven't they?
Yeah, exactly. So they're not going to be going anywhere. Then obviously you've got someone like Harvey Elliott's left in an interesting position.
Yeah.
But if they're going to sign, or if they're, we're led to believe that Bayern Munich are still the favourites, aren't they? In Germany it seems to be that the case. But they don't want to pay the 125, do they?
Well, I think Leverkusen would like him to, if he's going to leave, don't go to your direct rival. And I think in general, German football is sick of Bayern Munich taking all the best players. So I think maybe that's why there's been no sort of frustration from Leverkusen's end that he's been sort of hawking himself out in England, because they would, if he's going to leave, they would ideally like him to leave the Bundesliga.
Yeah. So if it's a case of like Liverpool almost spent 110 million on Caicedo, didn't they, 2 years ago? Mm-hmm. So there's obviously a kind of the willingness to spend massively on these players, but it could be someone who he ticks 2 or 3 boxes, which mean that you don't have to get the other midfield and you don't have to get the number 9, and then you go, well, but they might need another forward anyway if, say, for example, Chiesa goes, but then you're not spending massive amounts.
Yeah, you buy a different type of number 9, I suppose. Yeah.
There's lots and lots of different kind of players. Then it opens up the market a lot more. We were talking before, weren't we, about the lad at Brentford, Mbeumo.
Brian Mbeumo,
He'd be somebody. I mean, I'm not sure he'd cost 30 million. You know what I mean? He'd be a lot more than that. but it wouldn't cost 125 million, for example. So by getting a big name in like that, or a big fee, it in some ways it is a bit more cost effective if you know exactly what you're going to do with them.
Liverpool could also bring in loads of money this summer for players who were on the fringes. Darwin Núñez, if Saudi Arabian interest is still there. Queeve Kelleher with Mamardashvili coming in, he's almost certain to leave because it's the last summer that Liverpool can get a fee for him, and he doesn't want another year of not playing. So Simicast, Liverpool targeting a left back. They're not going to keep 3 on the books, are they? So there's just 3 players there who could quite feasibly bring in the best part of 100 million, if not more. So yeah, there's some juggling to be had this summer, isn't there?
I mean, we know that they got 50 million up the sleeve because they would have spent it on Zubimendi last year as well. So you're looking at this, if Liverpool, now this is just going off what we've, 30 million for Frimpong, roughly 40 million for Kirkes. Do you reckon something along those lines? Yeah. And then if they're in for Verts, that's another 100 million, 80 to 100 million. And so you look at it, well, that's nearly getting towards 200 million. But if you are getting money in for Núñez, for Chiesa, for Simicast, we won't get a lot for Simicast, but Harvey Elliott could be one that goes. Kelleher's another one because they've already spent the money on Mamardashvili. So they could end up spending a lot of money on players, but they could end up recouping a lot as well. Yeah. And that's basically the model.
And it feels like they've pushed this squad in terms of, those types of squad players. They've got about as much as they can out of them, and I think it is time to sort of squad players. I think need to be recycled, don't they? Because they lose their effectiveness. So yeah, I think it would make sense. And I wonder what they'll do with Jota. Jota might be another one that they might. But then I don't think they'll actively sell him, but I think if they got an offer, they would have to think about it.
Yeah, you could do. Sorry, that one.
I don't think Diaz is another one, isn't he? There's a lot of talk about Diaz's future, but I look at Diaz now and think, surely you would keep him.
Diaz for me has played himself into a have to keep.
Yeah,
and he was quite encouraging what he said to Telemundo, wasn't it, last week, when he was basically saying, "I want to stay at Liverpool for many years if he can." So still on the same deal he signed. When was it? January 2022. So he's probably due a little bit of an upgrade, a bit of a pay bump. And yeah, I think he's had a very good season, to be fair. Diaz played a lot of it out of position, but he's really stood up to the task. And, him, Gakpo and Salah, really important players for the next couple of seasons at least, obviously with Salah's deal. And then how you sort of restructure it around them with maybe Chiesa and Núñez. I think they might keep Jota, but like you say, if an offer comes in, it's certainly one to look at.
I think there are, as I said before, there are a lot more options outside of the number 9 because basically there's a lot of players who like to play on the wing coming in, don't they?
Yeah.
There's a lot of wide attacking players now, players in the number 10. So if they do get someone like Verts, as I said before, who can tick a couple of boxes, then it opens up a lot more players for them. So that's when it becomes interesting. But, as we've said, to get somebody like Verts is going to be difficult for all the reasons that we've mentioned.
We all gave our opinions on Verts this morning in a piece online, but you and I largely in agreement that I think Liverpool need to be competing for these types of players, especially now that they're league champions. They are in a position of strength, and if they're going to get a Wirtz, you wouldn't have thought. You would think that this is the time they can strike when they're saying, look how good we are, look how far ahead the competition we are, and we're going to grow. Rather than lots of their rivals seem to be. If you're Man City, you're selling the next Man City team, aren't you?
Yeah, I think they were a little bit unlucky through just circumstances of the pandemic, really, in 2020 when they arrived into that summer as champions, because I think the owners were a little bit hesitant in terms of not knowing what the landscape looked like. A full season was approaching without supporters, paying fans in the ground, and I think everyone was a little bit sort of wary of how that might impact the finances, not just at Liverpool, but across football as a whole. So this idea of selling the club as champions of England, looking to build and go on and dominate, probably was impacted by that. They still brought in Thiago and Jota and Simicast that summer, but maybe it was a little bit of a missed opportunity looking back with hindsight. But I think this summer now, Liverpool are set up really to maybe not necessarily dominate, but you look at it next season and you'd be a brave person to say anyone's going to win the title ahead of them, aren't they, coming off the back of what's just happened. And we know the there's work to be done at Arsenal. There's certainly a lot of work to be done at City, even though they will challenge again. So Liverpool in a really strong position now, and I think there's a hunger in the squad to really go and have a proper assault on the Champions League next season. I think they'll be a little bit burned by how they went out. You know, they could have been eliminated by the winners. We'll know, won't we, by the end of the month in PSG, and it was only on penalties. And I think there'll be a different approach to that league phase. There might be some more resting and rotating and acceptance that you don't have to absolutely have to finish first. Just make yourself near the top and everything will work out quite well. So, yeah, I think there's a lot to entice targets this summer, and I think Arne Slotter's become an important cog of that as well, because 12 months ago he was a little bit unheralded, wasn't he? But now he's a Premier League winning coach who I'm sure a lot of players would like to play under.
I'm just going to rattle through a few comments. It's got some interesting questions and comments. The Grim Sleeper says, "Be great if Ingamoa could come back to pre-season 6 inches taller." I've been wishing that.
He's well. I went to see them play, and he's definitely grown in the last 6 months. Yeah,
there you go. There's an update. Write it in.
I think I did. Read it,
okay.
Joe.
That's your academy roundup.
Yeah. Which is now stopped because they're not playing any games.
I've been waiting to come back to pre-season 6 inches taller all my life.
Wish I was a little bit taller. Wish I was a baller.
Yeah, I'm neither.
That is a very, very niche reference. Yes. Remember you sang it?
Do you know what? I always forget this now. Go on.
D-Lo as well. Wasn't it like something like low?
I don't know.
Right. Sorry. Other comments. Abdul Rahim says, "Is Wirtz a PR stunt?"
No. I never get this argument. It absolutely makes no sense let's just pretend we're in for a big player when we're not. It makes it look small time when they inevitably don't get the player in. Just leads to more frustration from supporters.
And I would also going to make a point about Wirtz is that if he ends up at Man City, if Man City, Chelsea, Arsenal or Man United spend that money on him and he goes there, nobody bats an eyelid because they expect them to do that. So why should be any different at Liverpool? Skilo, by the way.
Skilo, yeah. But also as well, Liverpool very much wouldn't like us to know that Florian Wirtz is being targeted. Yeah. You know, it's not like people at the club are on the phone saying, after Florian Wirtz, you know, this is happening and that's happening. They, you know, us reporting it probably makes it harder for them in a way because now supporters have maybe got a little bit their expectations up, even though it's been couched in this idea that still believe that Bayern are the front runners and whatever else. But this idea that any player is nothing but a PR stunt is just nonsense. Yeah,
I think it's nonsense. And I think as well, clubs, if Liverpool get wind that he could be sold by Leverkusen, of course they want to be in the conversation. Of course they've got something to sell and they can go and say, look, you know, like you say, if he wants to go to Bayern, fine. But if he wants to come to England, you can choose Man City or you can choose the champions. So why wouldn't Liverpool want to be in the conversation? So yeah, he makes a good point in the sense that he says we have other areas to strengthen. Yeah,
that's true. Yeah, but you know, some players are game changers, aren't they?
Yeah, and exactly, and also it's a unique market opportunity.
Well, it is that.
There is a generational talent.
Yeah, generational talent.
Yeah. He's not an aspirational target. He's an actual target.
I mean, that is a good point. You know, you've said that with your tongue in cheek, but you know, Richard Hughes said from day one, didn't he? The opportunistic is the way around it, and I think some people took that to mean that they're going to be a little bit sort of bargain basement hunting and scrabbling around.
It works both ways, doesn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, there's a broad spectrum to that turn of phrase, I suppose.
Yeah.
I hope he signs anyway, because it'd be good for headlines and stuff and puns.
Just like Endo. Endo was a godsend, wasn't he?
What are you on about? Anyway, go
on. Carl Brooks says, any rumours of Angelo Stiller? I've seen his name mentioned. He'd be a class addition. He plays for Stuttgart. He's a midfielder. I just don't know whether Liverpool, I mean, Wirtz is surprised, doesn't it? But I don't think Liverpool would be in the market for a more traditional centre midfielder anymore.
Well, they've got 4 going into 3, haven't they? And I think one thing Arne Slot has maybe learned across the course of this season is that he maybe needs to rotate and rest a little bit more at certain times. And to do that, he needs maybe a more fulsome squad of players who he can trust. So it possibly could do with another midfielder, particularly if Endo moves on. I'm still not too sure what's going to happen with Harvey Elliott. Very different profile of players, of course. But yeah, I mean, it's not one that I've seen majorly. I haven't chased it up or anything, so I'm not sure. But yeah, I don't necessarily I wouldn't necessarily discount the idea that Liverpool are looking at a midfielder.
Okay. And then there's a lot of talk in the comments about whether Conor Bradley could play in a midfield role, whether that be like Jordan Henderson on the right-hand side of a 3 or as defensive midfield. I didn't... Yeah.
Conor Bradley?
Yeah.
No, I mean, he's a right-back, isn't he? And I've seen him play a little bit further up, but he's been playing at the academy level, but I've never seen him play in midfield.
Can we stop trying to make every right-back a midfielder?
Exactly, yeah. He's a right-back.
All right, that's fine. It's just talking about what's being talked about in the comments. Right, well, we'll quickly move on to picking our team and the results.
There's a game.
There's a game, is there? Yeah.
I haven't spoken about Arne Slot being in Beach or
the
players in Dubai.
I don't think we need to talk too much about the game, considering the players haven't exactly been spending all week prepping for it, have they?
Well, they did this last week, to be fair, at the Arsenal game. It didn't quite go on as team bonding trips. I think they all had little trips with the partners and whatever else. But I think they came back on Friday for 2 days training before the Arsenal game. So I think it'll be similar this week.
Still drew 2-2. It doesn't tell you about Arsenal.
I was expecting Arsenal to sort of steamroll Liverpool when I found that out, because I just thought, the old phrase, they're on the beach. They almost literally were up until sort of 2 days earlier. But they still put in a really good first half performance. So I don't think it's going to massively hamper them at Brighton, particularly given that the game is on Monday as well.
Yeah. Okay. So pick your team then.
Alisson. I think Conor Bradley will start, and that'll be interesting to see if Trent is on the bench or not. Robertson, Kanate, and Virgil.
Taffarel, my dad, Mighty Red, Ian Kroll.
And left centre back or right centre back?
Which one? Left. So put him on the right just to confuse them. And I said me on the left, but I'm not going either. So no, actually, it'll be. This is the game where we called this a while back, didn't we? We thought Chelsea and Brighton is where they rotate the players, and then when they play at home against Arsenal and Palace, is where they'll try and play more or less the full strength team. And so I think Kelleher, I just don't see Kelleher going in goal, I'm afraid. As much as I think it would be nice to see him in there. Alisson, Bradley, Quansah, Van Dijk, Tsimikas.
Yeah, okay.
Midfield, Jones, McAllister. I think he might give Gravenberch another breather. And Szoboszlai.
Endo, McAllister and Elliott.
Do you think it'd be really that rotated? Yeah.
Yeah.
Fair enough. And forward line then? I'll stick with you. No, stick with you then.
Yeah, I don't think it'll rotate too much. There's been 8 days between games, haven't there? And they've had some good downtime. I think Salah, the centre forward, is probably the interesting one. I think he might start Diaz and play Gakpo off the left.
Salah, Jota, and Diaz.
Do you think Nunez's race is run?
I can't see it. No. Unless, the last game he picks Chiesa, Nunez, Trent, everybody.
Chiesa didn't get in the squad on Sunday, didn't he? Which I think, for the manager who's admitted he wants to give players a little bit of a chance, that was quite damning of him.
Well, he wasn't great when he came on against Chelsea. I know it was late on. Can we just talk about Chiesa for a second?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
I think that one of the interesting things for all of us on social media has been the supposed the accusations of supposed very rough treatment from Slot towards Chiesa. And with the exception of what he did in the League Cup final, when Antonio Nunes scored a consolation in the League Cup final. Chiesa's a lot better than he was, by the way. There just hasn't really been anything from him. And they see him in training all the time. And there's probably a variety of reasons. Injury didn't help him. Probably, the intensity of the Premier League is the one thing that I think has kind of caught him out. And probably the reason that he did so well against Newcastle is that Newcastle by that point were absolutely shattered and were obviously very nervous and holding on.
Yeah, I think that's fair. He wasn't the only one, but against Plymouth he really struggled, and you'd expect him to show his class against the Championship's rock bottom team at the time, I think, and he was really poor that day, and he hasn't really been seen since, has he? And I wonder how much of that signing was Arne Slot asking for it, and how much of it was Richard Hughes pushing for it.
And the reality is Liverpool won the league and they're 15 points clear, and I don't think you can argue with what the manager's done with any of the players, to be honest.
100% agree. And I think it comes down to what you said before. They see him in training. And I always had this with other players, Keita. There was always talk about Keita. And the manager doesn't pick him. And if the manager doesn't pick him, they obviously see them day to day and don't think they're quite there. And I think with Chiesa, a number of reasons. It was weird, wasn't it, early in the season when he wasn't even getting in squads because of his fitness.
Yeah.
There's something
He did
there.
miss the pre-season, though, didn't
He did,
to be fair.
but there's other players have missed pre-seasons and have been more involved. He was basically frozen out for a little bit as if to say, get your fitness right.
I remember an alarm bell ringing for me in Leipzig when Slot got asked about it. That would have been October time. And his answer wasn't really very firm. It was almost just like, he can't handle this intensity. And then that was like, well, he's going to struggle. And at no point has he come any closer to making himself a first-team player, really. No. And almost, I think Liverpool are possibly quite cynical on this one as well, where they got him for a knockdown price and think, well, they can probably sell him for maybe 50% profit in 12 months' time. I hope he doesn't go back out on loan. There's absolutely no value in that for anyone. Maybe for him to play, but Liverpool will pay his wages for a year in the hope that an Italian team comes in and tries to make it permanent. But, we've seen it before, haven't we, with Aquilani, who just got farmed out on loan for years, really, in the hope that someone bought him and no one ever really did. So, for me, I think you're looking at this summer at maybe moving him on, and either Ben Doak comes in to replace him, or you look at someone a bit more senior.
Yeah, it was worth the gamble, wasn't it? I can understand why they would take the gamble, but I think him being left out altogether last week just said everything you need to know.
He's got his 5 games, so he was going to get his medal anyway. But
particularly with Nunez as well, not exactly turning up any trees at the moment, is he? So it would have been an easy one to sub Chiesa in for him, but still hasn't happened.
Yeah, and playing for Liverpool, it's not something they should just give out. And I kind of feel like there's been, because he seems to have quite a sunny disposition, doesn't he? I think people are almost like, oh, give him a go. And
well, that's the thing, is that all the youngsters who played, with the exception of Jadon Dance, who played in the Cups, none of them have had a minute. Tyler Morton hasn't had a single minute in the Premier League this season, and he's been more deserving of it than Chiesa.
Give us a score prediction then.
3-1 to Brighton.
2-2.
And 2-2. Strikes me the type of game where Liverpool might surprise you in parts of it and then be awful in parts of it.
It'll be Brighton breezy.
Well, Brighton have got something to play for, haven't they? So, and they're a good side as well.
It's 8th, isn't it? That's going to get a Conference
Is it that
League
far
place.
down?
Yeah. It's certainly. I think it's 8th. It's Man City win I can't remember.
Brighton are one of those teams this season, like quite a few others, Bournemouth, Brentford, come to mind. That 1 minute you think it's the hardest away game of the season. You look at them and they're flying. They've won 5 in a row, and then you look again, they've lost 5 in a row, and they're down in 12th, and you think, how did that happen? So they seem to have picked up again. Am I right?
I think Premier League teams probably. You've got a job on to not get into Europe for next season. Europa League final next week between 16th and 17th in the Premier League.
Exactly, that is
remarkable.
By the way, and don't forget, if Manchester United win it, you owe me a tenner.
I do, yeah. So I'll be. Tell you what, it'd be nice if Spurs won. Going back to our original debate.
Exactly. There you go. Yeah. So do you want them both to lose that game, Joe?
If they could, yes. That's the point.
I'll be cheering on Big Ange.
Yeah, Brighton are 9th at the moment and have been bright and breezy recently.
Fulham 11th.
2 wins and draw. Fulham are 11th, yeah.
And so Bournemouth are 10th.
They've lost 4 of their last 5, Fulham.
The only one that they won.
Yeah.
I
thought it was that 3 games ago.
Yeah.
It might have been before that.
Well, whatever.
Yeah, so, there you go. Brighton breezy, believe it. No. Okay, right, that's the right.
When are we back next week? Because there's a game on Monday.
We will probably be back on Tuesday at some point, and I'll probably be joined by different people. I don't know who. Yeah, so we'll see about that, but it won't be on Monday because Liverpool play Monday evening, of course. So we'll be back on Tuesday, I think. But yeah, thank you for all your comments. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Please like, subscribe, press the bell. Leave some hearts, leave some stars, leave some thumbs up. Someone's just
what are the hearts?
Hearts, just I don't know.
What are they on? Ian, what are they on?
No, there isn't. I think just made that up. But if you want to send hearts anywhere, it's always nice. Thumbs up. Lots of nice things. And otherwise, we'll see you on Tuesday. Goodbye.